say, "Hi, sir. My name's Tom Mancuso. What's your name?" And the guy looks at me with his sunglasses and his hat, and he reaches his hand out, and his hand is trembling. And he says, in the middle of a hospital that was relatively quiet, "My name is Muhammad Ali." And I did remember who Muhammad Ali was, kind of. But I was in such shock that that's who it was and that's what was going on in that situation. I said, "Okay, have a good day." And I wheeled myself back over.
Welcome to Get Real 411, the podcast where real experts give real advice on all things real estate. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Brad.
Join us as we explore real estate successes and pitfalls through the eyes of our esteemed guests.
Now let's get real.
Well, we are so excited today to have with us Tom Mancuso, one of our very own branch managers here at Amerifund, and also a dear friend to me and to Brad, and an amazing human being. Tom, welcome.
Thank you.
So excited, Tom. Yeah, we're happy to have you.
So, Tom, we're going to talk a lot today about you and your story and the incredible journey that you've been on. And some folks that might be tuning in have heard parts of the story, but today we're really going to get down into it and really talk about this incredible story of redemption, perseverance that you embody, every single day, and that you've inspired so many people with. So, Tom, start off by telling us a little bit about your story and who you are.
So thank you for having me. Tom Mancuso. I'm a branch manager at Amerifund. I got into the mortgage business in 2019, spent a little over 10 years in the automotive finance business prior to that. Actually started selling cars when I was 18 years old. My father was in the car business. It was something I kind of grew up around, wanted to follow my father's footsteps. Unfortunately, when I was 21, my father got diagnosed with cancer, and shortly after that, a few months later, passed away. It affected him rapidly. And so I saw that firsthand and really struggled to wrap my head around that, obviously, as any young man would with their father. My father was my best friend, taught me so much as a child. I unfortunately, about 6 or 7 years later, suffered a very traumatic motorcycle accident. I used to race cars and motorcycles in my spare time. Stayed in the car business that time from 18 up until my late 20s. 28 years old, I was in a really serious motorcycle accident. Random Saturday, 12 o'clock on a Saturday, just changed the oil on the motorcycle, was getting ready to race it that following Sunday, took it around my block, 30 miles an hour, 2 blocks from my house. Something went wrong with the motorcycle. We believe the throttle got kind of pinned, full throttle. There were 3 children walking down the sidewalk, so I didn't want to lay the motorcycle down like you would on a racetrack. Because they skid and fly apart, and parts become projectiles. So I tried to ride it to a retaining wall, away from the children, and I tried to bail off the motorcycle before it hit the wall. Unfortunately, the wheel or the frame grabbed my left leg, and sandwiched me between the bike and the wall. It severed my left leg below the knee at the time. I was unconscious. I was basically bleeding to death. Luckily, one of the 12-year-old kids had his mom's cell phone and knew to call 911. I lived in a city north of Phoenix, so not a lot of street traffic in that neighborhood. So certainly if the child didn't call 911, I would have bled to death. After the child called 911, about a minute later, passerby happened to be driving with his wife to his son's house. He was a former Army medic. He jumped out of his truck, tied a tourniquet around my leg. I still lost about 40% of my blood. They airlifted me to a local trauma hospital. They had to keep me in a medically induced coma for 8 days because besides the leg amputation, I suffered a number of broken bones, but I also suffered a traumatic brain injury. And so my brain was swelling. And so to keep me from obviously passing away, they kept me in a medically induced coma. They had to give me a tracheotomy to keep me breathing. And I woke up 8 days later, and it was a whole new world. I had lost about 90% of my memory. So I completely woke up in shock. I had no idea where I was or what happened to me. Literally just laying in a bed with a bunch of wires coming out of me in an excruciating amount of pain, scared. It's fight or flight. So I jumped out of the hospital bed and I tried to get out of the hospital, not knowing that at that point I was missing a leg or part of my leg. So I fell on the end of my leg and face planted on the ground in the hospital and knocked myself unconscious. They would put me back in the bed. They would strap me down in the bed this time, which a day later, when I woke up again, even more trauma, even more shock because now I'm strapped to a bed. Um, it was pretty much like the worst thing that could ever happen. I mean, I was 28 years old. It was a Saturday. It was like noon on a Saturday. And then you wake up clinging for your life. It was horrible. It was something you never expect. Any motorcycle rider will tell you when they get on a motorcycle, they accept a certain level of risk and responsibility. I never thought if I got in a really bad accident, I would lose a leg. I never knew anyone who was an amputee. I thought I'd be paralyzed or dead. That was basically it. Never expected something like that to happen. And it happened all at once. And so I struggled in the hospital. I stayed in the emergency room hospital for 30 days just to try and wrap my head around what was going on. But because of my brain injury, I just couldn't comprehend a lot of things. The nurses and the doctors would tell my friends and family, the friends and family that did come see me. I thought I had hundreds of friends, but only a handful showed up in the hospital. I had a lot of party friends because I lived, kind of burning the candle at both ends. Worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, in a very fast-paced sales environment. Thought, money and ego was everything, and life came to a screeching halt. And so the doctors and nurses told my friends and family to get me to ask questions about my life. To help my brain regenerate the fibers in the frontal lobe of my brain. That's what was injured. And by asking me questions, it would make me try to remember. And by doing that, my brain would help reprocess these memories. The answers and the questions that I heard were not good. My friends would ask me, do you know what you do for a living? No, I don't. What do I do? They're like, oh, you're a finance manager. And I'm like, oh, awesome. Like, you have a great job. Yeah, you wear a suit to work all the time. And awesome. Like, what else do I do? Well, I don't know. You work a lot. Like, what do you mean I work a lot? Like, all the time. Like, you get like 1 day off every 2 weeks. Well, what else do I do? I don't know. You go out and party and you get really drunk and you do all these crazy things. Understand that I was basically like a 6 or 7 year old mental capacity shortly after my accident. So that doesn't really register, right? Common sense tells you like, what do you get out of that? And I'm like, what do I get out of that? That was my response to one of my friends, and said, I don't know. You get like a lot of bar bills. You got a couple of DUIs. You went to jail for DUIs. I don't really know what you get out of it, but it's something that you spend a lot of time doing. And we think that part of it is just the stress of your job and losing your dad. Hey, where is my dad? Your dad died 7 years ago. And so a lot of those things those memories started to come back, and they were not good memories. And so as I lay in a hospital bed, I'm missing my left leg, my right foot is broken, so I'm wearing a boot on my on my right foot. My left hand was shattered. I have a couple scars on my hand because they had put titanium rods in the skeleton of my hand to basically form it back. So my hand was frozen open. I'm, of course, left-handed. When I fell out of the hospital bed and I face planted on the ground, I knocked my top front teeth out and I fractured a vertebrae in my neck, along with I tore my rotator cuff in the accident on my left shoulder. So I'm completely destroyed physically. Not like a little bit messed up, like you start questioning, like, why did I survive? Like somebody that always thought that money and ego and status and like the way you looked or the car you drove all mattered, it was all gone. It was just it burnt up
There's so much
immediately.
to unpack, and we've talked so much about this offline. I mean, starting with the fact that, of all the times for you to have an accident, you were going 30 miles an hour in your neighborhood, just literally running the bike around really quick, just because you had changed the oil and so forth. If any one thing or any one person hadn't been in the precise place at the precise time that they were, what would have been different? What could have been different? And then waking up, not understanding where you are, who you are, or what has happened to you, and um, to be unable to get up really and move for you is a big, big, big deal. With all of that, I mean, before we even start to talk about life, moving through that, what do you think some of the greatest lessons and takeaways were from that piece of this story, that time leading up to, during, and shortly after the accident when you're in the hospital and all the things that transpired?
Unfortunately, I used to live for the moment. I look back at like my life before the accident, and I used to just think like I'm gonna live to like 100 and die in a nursing home. Then, unfortunately, like what happened with my father, I just really couldn't wrap my head around it. I was young. I was so scared. I used to help my parents financially because he couldn't work like when he was really really suffering, and so I would be like afraid to go over there and see that, and just hoped it would get better, and it didn't get better. And I just buried my head into work, and I really didn't have hopes and dreams anymore. Um, just kind of took all the spirit out of life, and really getting in the accident really forced me to deal with like the most fearful thing, the thing that I never want to experience, and I think about all the time, is being helpless, um, being stuck, being strapped down to a hospital bed, like, in a horrible situation, and random people who you don't know, just saying, trust us, you're going to be okay. Bullshit, bullshit. Like, look at me. Like, how am I going to be okay? Um, in my rehab hospital stay, so I stayed in the emergency room for 30 days. Then I went to a rehab hospital for 2 more months, so 90 days in the hospital. They had to reteach me in speech therapy 2 plus 2, 3 plus 2, 5 plus 2, like basic math skills. When I told my friends who came to visit me that, they said, "What did you do in speech therapy today? What did you do in therapy?" Like, "Oh, I did math." And they're like, "Oh, I bet you that was easy. In high school you were doing algebra and college level classes when you were a sophomore." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, we went over like addition." Like, what? Like, they thought I was joking, and I wasn't. And they didn't mean it for it to be a negative thing, but then it really, like, after they leave, I'm like, God, I'm stupid now. Like, I'm physically worthless. I was single, no children, wanted to get married, have a family. Like, that's gone. Like, my only job, my job that I've done my entire life, like sales, and that's gone. I don't even know how to walk. Like, even when I got my first prosthesis, I was still stuck in a wheelchair because I couldn't I didn't know how to walk with it. And I mean, you just feel helpless. And so, you know, for someone who wanted to do everything for himself, or figure out a way to do everything for himself, I not only had to ask for help, but I had to truly depend on other people for help. And that still is something. You've seen me. I could be on crutches, no prosthesis, and I'll try and carry a tray or something. I, it's just a thing. I don't want to ask for help, and sometimes we just have to ask for help. We have to. It's a matter of finding the right people that we can trust to ask for help, and that's a big thing for me because I've had a lot of people break trust in my life. People that have been very close to me have broke trust. Whether it was the bar tab stopped, or the partying stopped, or the sports cars went away, and they just returned their back on me. And so I had to learn that you have to trust people, certain people, and you do need to ask for help in life, whether that's work or personal life, or literally someone teaching you how to walk again. I mean, I've had to learn multiple times over how to walk. Every time I get a different type of
Yep.
lower limb prosthesis, I have to relearn how to walk. And not only do I have to trust the person teaching me, who most of the time, 99.9% has two legs, keep in mind,
Yeah.
but I have to trust that that device is not going to allow me to break my neck.
So Tom, look,
So
for me, I've heard this story a handful of times, right? And every time you tell it, it brings out different emotions. You paint such a vivid picture that our listeners that are listening to this right now, even if it's not on video, I'm sure in their mind can picture all this. And it's incredible. And in the face of all this adversity, which is extraordinary, and it's ongoing, right? You have overcome so much to have an extremely full life. But beyond that, such an amazing, great attitude, a giving person, trustworthy, honest, like all the things that you would want in a loan officer, you have, or any trusted advisor, but even in a friend, right? And totally understand where some of these emotions come from and the feeling of, wanting loyalty from people and some of those other things and trust. So I think, to kind of not change gears, but stay in the same theme, because I know offline we talked about let's not make it all about your story. There have been really nice recordings of you talking about your entire journey, but really rather how that adversity created who you are today, what your life looks like today, and then where you're taking it, right? Because you have a family, you have two kids, like you have some really amazing things that have happened in your life and really close friends. Things are quite different, right? You don't touch alcohol, you don't party, like you just live life. You hike. Yeah, I mean, some of these things, I'll let you say it, but some of these things are just so amazing. Like you hike and do mountains more than a lot of two-legged people do, right? And maybe you tell just a little bit about the story where you dragged yourself up, but I'd like to see how that has kind of changed your outlook and how you've applied that to being who you are today, and how that has helped your customers and the people you encounter in business and personally.
there came a time where I remember I was sitting on my couch after I was released from the hospital, just heavily medicated. Um, Doctors just throwing medication at me. I mean, I was in a horrible situation. I suffered from severe PTSD, depression, panic attacks, anxiety, you name it. And I just got to the point where it was like, I have two choices. I can either just give up and die, or I can get up and try and live my life. And when I tell my story, I want everyone to understand we all have an asterisk next to our name. We all have gone through struggles and trials and tribulations in our life. They may look completely different than mine, and people may think mine is many times worse than theirs. A lot of times I hear people's story and I think their story is many times worse than mine. There's a lot of things that I would never want to deal with that friends and colleagues of mine that have had to endure. So when I tell my story, I don't tell it from the point of please, woe is me, or please have sympathy for me. I tell my story because I want people to never forget that asterisk, those things that have been done to us or have happened to us, are meant to challenge us and make us grow and change us and make us stronger and make us persevere through trauma or trials. And so I just got to the point where it was not going to get any better unless I got up and did something about it. At the rehab hospital, when I started doing outpatient therapy with my prosthesis, they wanted me to get on a Wii Fit video game, like a little Wii balance board, and you'd stand in front of a TV in the gym, in the rehab gym. And I was like, no, my attitude still, I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't play video games. I'm a finance manager. No, I wasn't. Like, I had no hope of going back to finance, what I thought at the time. And my physical therapist, who I still talk to this day, Michael Riker, he actually was at my wedding, which was absolutely amazing. Said, hey, when this patient is done on the Wii, go talk to him. There was an African American guy wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses in a gym, in a hospital, in the middle of the day. And I said, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go tell him you guys talked him into doing this stupid video game, and I'm gonna tell him how stupid it is. Guy gets done on the weed. He goes over to a stationary bike. I wheel myself over with my prosthesis, just totally crapped out. And I introduce myself. I say, hi, sir. My name's Tom Mancuso. What's your name? And the guy looks at me with his sunglasses and his hat. And he reaches his hand out, and his hand is trembling. And he says, in the middle of a hospital that was relatively quiet, my name is Muhammad Ali. And I did remember who Muhammad Ali was, kind of. But I was in such shock that that's who it was and that's what was going on in that situation. I said, okay, have a good day. And I wheeled myself back over to my workbench. And my physical therapist came back with a couple of hand weights and he said, hey, did you go talk to that patient? I said, yeah. Is that really Muhammad Ali? He goes, yeah. I go, what is he here for? He goes, oh, we're like the #1 neurotherapy hospital in the Southwest. He comes here for Parkinson's therapy. I thought, like, well, he like trusts you guys? Like he listens to you guys? And he goes, yeah, well, he understands that we know some of the things that he doesn't and he needs our help. And so I thought, wow, okay, okay. And I remember laying in the hospital bed that night by myself, watching reruns of I Love Lucy or something on TV. And I just remember thinking, like, man, maybe it's time I check my ego and really, really look for certain people that, and I would learn later, the certain people is people who have a passion for their craft. They feel that whatever they do in life is their calling. It's not a job. It's not something just to buy time until they get where someone that truly takes a passion in what they do. And every day I would go to therapy 3 days a week. 3 days a week I'll go to therapy. I never talked to Muhammad Ali again, but when I did see him, I'll never forget, I would be like in the parallel bars. I could only put one hand in the parallel bars because my other hand is messed up. He would just look at me and he would just keep like raise his hand and just kind of like shake his fist at me. Like, you keep going. And I look back at that, like just the power of supporting someone. Not even that he was doing anything for me or I'm doing something for someone else, just to know that you're there to support someone, whether they need to talk to you, whether you need to be a shoulder for them to cry on, whether they just need a hug, whatever it is, just that you're there to support them, the power in that. And I thought, you know what? I can't do a lot right now, but I can be supportive to certain people, whether they're other patients or whether they're friends of mine or my mother. I can be supportive. And it's hard to be supportive when I lost everything materialistic that I owned. I almost lost my house. I lost everything because I couldn't work. I had no, our financial resources had basically all gone by the wayside because of my father. And so in 7 years, we had to recoup that, especially keep in mind, this was 2009. So the market crashed. So the automotive business, I worked for General Motors. They almost went bankrupt. So the economy went to the tank. We have no savings. I can't work. I mean, it was a very tough situation. But to be supportive, to try and be positive, there's something to that. And so it got to a point where there's a quote that I always look at. It says, get up. No one's coming to save you. Be your own hero. That's what happened to me. I just got to the point where it was a simple choice. I can either give up and die, or I can try and get up and live the best life that I can. And so I've been blessed because that attitude has opened a lot of doors for me. A lot of people look at what happened to me and can't imagine how they could have a positive attitude. I just didn't have a choice. I was on a ton of medication, a ton of controlled substances. The pain wasn't going away. My leg's not growing back. Like, I got to figure this out. I started spending the time that I could wear my prosthesis volunteering to speak to new amputees, to just share with them what I went through, the cliff notes of what I went through, because nobody told me anything. I met other amputees who shared their story with me and shared their struggles with me. And that's how I learned. I relate that to loan officers, right? Like, there's no journal of all the little intricacies of certain loans with written anywhere. But if I talk to another loan officer who has much more experience with FHA loans than I do, they might have run into the same situation. Well, it's the same thing as an amputee. I couldn't get my prosthesis to stay on to fit properly, so I would ask them what they did or how they managed that type of situation. And so that's truly where I guess I healed myself through gratitude and strengthening my character and truly seeing every day that someone always has it worse than me. No matter how horrible my life was, I'm broke, I'm about to lose my house, lost everything, lost my cars, lost my motorcycles, everything. Um, then I would meet a double amputee who has no legs and think, holy shit, like I guess I don't have it that bad. And then I would see that double amputee running around a track with running legs. And I'm thinking, they told me I couldn't even go up my stairs at home and I had to sleep on the first floor for the rest of my life because they said an above the knee amputee can't climb stairs. But I'm in a disabled fitness center watching a double above the knee amputee run around a track. Then I would see a quadriplegic amputee, a quad amputee, no arms, no legs, playing wheelchair rugby with a Paralympic rugby team. And I'm thinking, what's my excuse? And so I remember those things. I try not to ever forget those things, that someone can always have it worse. I can always have it worse. So I need to be thankful. But ultimately, I shouldn't have lived, Jamie, like you said, if any one of those things, if the children weren't there, if the Vietnam veteran wasn't there, I wouldn't have lived. I shouldn't have lived. And my story would have just been over. But I got a second chance. But not many
And
people
look what you've
get a
done with
second
it.
chance.
You were meant to
Yeah,
have
I
a
mean,
second chance. And I would argue that all of the character traits that you developed because of what you went through were already there within you. And, having met your mom, it's pretty evident what an amazing person she is. And, I didn't get a chance to know your dad, but they obviously raised some pretty amazing human beings. And the adversity that you went through was just the catalyst to allowing you to envision what you wanted to give back in this world and change your focus from a life that you described as kind of empty into a life that I think you would agree is more full and more blessed than than a lot of people ever get, and certainly more so than you imagined you would ever have when you were sitting on that couch making that decision. Do I give up or do I get up? And you got up. And that is a testament to perseverance and strength. And it's a message to everybody out there, to your point. Some scars are not visible on the outside, some trauma is not physical. Some life experiences that knock us down are things that we don't share and we don't talk about. But no matter what the struggle, no matter how it looks from the outside, it's real to the person that's experiencing it. And everybody has a choice to give up or to get up. And I think one of the reasons we're friends is because we both made the choice to get up at some point in our lives and not give up. And I know that that's the message that you want others to hear. And so I would love to get some perspective from you, because we've been friends for so long that you weren't a dad when we became friends. And now you're the father of two beautiful boys, Giovanni and Nico. And I would like to know how you think this experience and the things that you've endured, how they've shaped you as a father.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly one that looks back at these things and I think it's a blessing that this happened to me. I know that sounds completely weird to some people, but I truly believe it's a blessing. That's how I met my wife, through the advocacy work that I was doing. My wife is a physical therapist. I met her when she was finishing her doctorate because I volunteered and went and educated doctorate students on what it's like to be a patient struggling with a disability or PTSD in a hospital. And we re-met like a year later and started dating, and have been together for almost 8 years now, and been married for 4 years. And I'm completely blessed uh, with two amazing boys. And I it's definitely something that makes me look at what I've been through, and how can I how can I help prepare these young men for life. Um, and while I want them to be book smart and educated, I also need to prepare them for the real world. And it's something that my father was so smart at doing. Even as a child, I had an allowance, but like something like a squirt gun, even if I had the money for the squirt gun, he'd be like, well, gas isn't free. How are we going to go get it? And, he would just put the whole picture into perspective for me. Um, and so I look at these boys, and I know they're 2 years old and almost 1 years old, and I know they don't totally grasp their dad yet. Um, I know they will. They're the students in Giovanni's school, like his daycare. They've started to notice my leg, and Giovanni just thinks it's normal. Like if we're gonna go somewhere, he'll go point at my prosthesis. It's charging, and he'll go point at it and point at me, like put it on, let's go. Um, but it's something that life is going to deal them challenges, and it's a matter of preparing them to deal with those challenges, and it's a matter of not babying them, showing them and teaching them the the skills that helped me survive through these things, that unfortunately it's on you. Brad, you talk about me hiking or rock climbing or working out. I push myself physically, because that also helped me overcome this trauma that I went through, and on many levels. My father, the accident, the brain injury, many levels. But there's something to pushing yourself physically, and breaking through barriers that you prove to yourself. I mean, I prove to myself every day that I can do something that I didn't think I could do. Whether it's walking a mile in the morning, whether it's working out in the afternoon, or walking, hiking 5 miles. Um, while it's nice that I see people on the hiking trail that go, oh my gosh, how motivating and inspiring, that's nice, but we need to look inside of ourselves. It's not about being better than someone else. It's about being better than who I was yesterday. And that's what I want my boys to understand. And I want them to understand that, there's something to gratitude. There truly is something for caring for another person, for being a good citizen, a good human being, a good spirit. No matter when everything else in your life is falling apart, if you can be there for someone else, it's the most powerful gift in the world. The most amazing gift I've ever been given, other than my children and my wife, is the fact that I could go to a hospital when someone is at their absolute worst day in their world, in their life, and I would be able to give them just a small sliver of hope. And that is just that's something. It's an intangible gift. You cannot buy hope. To be able to give someone who's basically clinging to sanity or clinging to life, give them a sliver of hope. And maybe it's just by being supportive or sharing my story. And so, Jamie, we talk about this often. We need to share our story, not only to overcome it ourselves, to put words behind our experiences, but to help others. Like I always think, like if I just kept my struggles and everything that happened to me to myself, like what good does that do to the world? Like it would just, first of all, it would make me implode, because I would just be an angry, bitter person and blow up. But not only that, why would I not want to share this and help someone that's maybe going through something similar, or maybe it's completely different and they just need to know that someone overcame some really bad shit in life. And so I want my boys to understand, life is going to hand it out to you. Life's going to deal you, a lot of struggles and challenges, and things that they're not going to expect. And that's when the worst things happen. But it's a matter of how you prepare yourself, how secure you are with yourself, and just focusing on what's most important. It's not material things, it's the people you surround yourself, your family, and the love that you have for those people. And the And I guess the relationship that you have and the gratitude that you show for people that you love in your life. Too many things go unsaid in life. When I tell my boys that I love them and I hold them and I kiss them, like I want them to never, ever, ever forget how much their dad loved them. I'm not going to be here forever. And my father passed away when he was 54 years old. That's 13 years for me. I'm 41. And so maybe I only have 13 more Christmases with them or 13 more birthdays. I want to do as much as I can in that 13 years to prepare them for the life that they're going to lead. But I want them to also not just think of themselves. Like we are here to do what we can for our community and serve others. And I'm sure lots of people roll their eyes when I talk so passionately about what we do in real estate, but it truly is a gift to truly help families become homeowners. That's all I had after my accident was the roof over my head was that home. If it was a rental, it would have been gone. The only reason I kept it was because I had a mortgage on it. Like that's all I had. That's all where I wanted to go when I was in the hospital for 3 months. That's all I thought about. I just wanted to be at home in my house. That's all I thought about. I never forget that. I proposed to my wife at our house. Like those memories to play a very small part in that of our community's life and our community as a whole. That's why I get so passionate about that. This isn't a job to me. This is so much more. This is just my way of serving my community even more. I still volunteer. I just don't talk about those things because I don't want publicity for that. I don't share pictures of that stuff. I rarely will ever put a picture out of that. That's something I do for me and the person that I'm visiting. But the way I truly serve my community is through my work. And sure, this is an amazing gift that I've been able to do with this job. But I want my boys to understand that truly living a life of gratitude and serving others and giving back to others is what life is truly about.
And you do that, Tom. I mean, we see the way you interact with your customers and their responsiveness to you and how they thank you so passionately for your help. So, I mean, you're living what you're saying. You really are.
Yeah.
And everybody recognizes that, including the people. I mean, you become quite the leader. The people that you've brought into the business that look up to you, you don't just bring them in and let them do their thing. You help them to flourish, and you're there for them all the time. And it's not because you have to; it's because that's who you've become.
Yep.
You become a real giver, right?
And you give to people that aren't even here at Amerifund and aren't even on your team. You give to all kinds of people in our community and our industry because if there's somebody that needs help, you're going to stop and give it to them. And when we talk about, the gift that this job gives us and the why behind what we do and how impactful it is, there are two things that come to mind. One of them is the fact that you were able to get your mom a home not long ago. It feels like yesterday, but it's actually been a couple of years now. And the second one is the fact that you were able to get your dear friends who trained Kona, and I want to hear more about Kona so people know about Kona, into a home just a few short months ago. And I know how meaningful that was to you because the things that you have endured and overcome have also led to some beautiful relationships that you've made with some pretty phenomenal human beings. Kona's trainers, of course, are two of those people. But so who's Kona? For those who don't know, who's Kona?
So I have Kona is a gray blue nose pit bull. She's 7 years old. Kona I got as a puppy, 8 weeks old. Kona was trained as a service and therapy dog because at the time I was working as a patient advocate, volunteering and seeing patients with disabilities. And one of the biggest things that impacted me when I was in the hospital for those 3 months was some hospitals had therapy dogs. Well, a dog doesn't care how many arms, legs, or eyes you have. They just want attention. They just want love. They want affection. And they give you back unconditional love. And so no matter how great my friends were, they would come into the hospital room and be like, "Oh, how are you? Like, how do you think I'm doing? Look at me. I'm destroyed." And so, but animals, like the dog would come in and I pet the dog and, the dog wag its tail and that just uplifts you just a small amount. So when I was doing that work, that patient advocacy work, it was my job. I ended up getting a full-time job that way. I actually talked my prosthetic company into giving me that job. I wanted a therapy dog to go with. but I didn't want just any therapy dog. If you know anything about pit bulls, you know that they might have a bad stigma. But before that bad stigma, um, back in like history of like World War II, they were known as nanny dogs. When families, the husband went off to war, serve in the military, the wives would go to work, they would leave a pit bull at home with their children to protect their children. President Roosevelt, Helen Keller all had pit bulls with their children. So when well trained, they are an amazing family dog. They're very affectionate. They have a high pain tolerance, but they're very, very affectionate dogs where their treat doesn't need to be a biscuit. It needs to be a hug or, affection from their owner. So they make a great therapy dog for that reason because they will give out the affection that they receive in return. And so it really worked out amazing. But Kona is a pit bull and needed to be trained. And I wanted her to be trained very precisely. And so she went off to training for 4 months. I got introduced to a private training company, and they boarded and trained her for 4 months. I saw her one time in 4 months. And as Jamie, as you're saying, it's interesting how life works, right? Like things come around. Like these trainers, this company, they knew the importance of what they were doing. And I don't think they ever really understood until recently the impact that Kona had. Like not just seeing patients in a hospital. I would go to colleges, like where I met my wife, and bring Kona to those students. But I would also go to elementary schools. A couple of elementary schools would invite me each year to teach second, third, fourth graders what a disability is, what a service dog is. And I would bring Kona and my mom's dog, who's actually an amputee pit bull, to those schools. And I would teach the children about a service dog or a therapy dog and what disabilities are. I bring all kinds of different prosthetic legs that I've accumulated over the years. And I would show this to these students by educating them, letting them touch them, letting them see them, not just in a book. I'd walk for them with the different legs. And so Kona has meant a lot to so many people. Most importantly, Kona is now a nanny dog to my boys, and they love her tremendously. But I was able to help that couple who owns that company purchase a home recently, and it was just a very particular situation that not only us as a broker, but us as a very passionate, dedicated broker was able to do. You and Brad, Jamie, you especially, were able to help us get a specific lender and pull this purchase across the finish line. So their training facility is in the heart of Scottsdale. The land is worth millions of dollars where they're at. And they've been on a very long-term lease. And the owner said, the lease is up, they're out. He's demolishing the home, selling the land. And they train 50, 60 dogs on that land. They house some of the dogs like they did Kona at the time. And so they were kind of behind the 8 ball as far as getting something, handled as quickly as possible. So I was able to do that. It's not just that. It's even if it's a stranger that I meet, I try to put myself in their position. How would I want someone to take care of me and my family? I mean, I go to places all the time where I need someone's help for my family. It could be the dentist, could be the pediatrician. I don't know those things. I have to trust that they're going to take care of me. Well, we got to get back as a society to giving out what we expect in return. If I expect people to take care of me and my family, I should take care of everyone and their family that comes across that needs my help. And that's why I try to take care of my clients so passionately, because it is something that is so important to that family and therefore so important to me. And I try to live my life being very passionate about what I do. And you're exactly right. That has made me some amazing connections with my clients because I truly feel that you can see through the bullshit, right? Like you can tell when you're just getting a line, I like to do video with my clients or video calls, or if I can't meet with them in person, I want them to see me. I'm not wearing a suit. I'm the first person to say that. I'm usually wearing shorts, whatever. But there is no replacement for my professionalism and dedication to serve my clients. I don't need to wear a suit to be dedicated and professional and passionate about serving my clients. And so I want to make that connection. And I that's something I share with all loan officers or professionals in our industry. Get back to that human connection. We need to remember these are our neighbors. This is our community. You know, that Vietnam veteran was driving down the street. He didn't know me. He jumped out of his truck, got my blood all over him. They went to the hospital with his wife and waited for my mom to get there. I barely remember speaking to him after I woke up because they came back several times. He didn't know me. I don't
Yeah.
know my clients. I don't know what they're exactly going through, but I'm here to help them if I can. That's my job. But that's also just my calling. We need to get back to that as a society, just taking care of one another.
Yeah, you definitely live a life of service. I before we get like too far here, I want to make sure because your story and just your energy is going to resonate with a lot of people, right? When they hear this. If somebody wants to work with you, what states are you licensed in and how can they reach you?
I'm licensed only in Arizona. Our company is licensed in just about 25 or 26 states. They can certainly reach me by calling my number 602-617-0081. They can call or text me anytime, or they can email me at tom.mancuso, which is MANCUSO, at amerifund.com.
Yeah, we'll put all that in the information below
We absolutely will.
the
And
post as
and
well.
by the way, you've got loan originators in your branch that you mentor and help who are not in Arizona. You've got some
Yeah,
folks in Texas, some folks in Alabama. You've got some folks in
Florida.
Indiana, so Florida. So certainly anybody that is interested in working with you can do so, even if they're licensed outside of Arizona. And as you know, we have some good plans to get your branch license in some additional states and
Yeah.
really expand your footprint as well. But you've got the company's umbrella there. So, obviously you and I could probably talk for about 2 days straight and not run out of things to say between the two of us. And Brad isn't often a spectator of this between us.
True.
Um, but, you know, I think that one of the things I would love for you to impart upon folks is, and this is really a good one for you. We ask this of all of our guests.
Yep.
If you could talk to the 20-year-old Tom, knowing what you know now, what would you tell him?
Boy, I would impress upon him that material things don't matter and status doesn't matter as much as he may think. I was someone that I went to a very affluent high school, but my parents had a body shop business that actually went bankrupt right before I went to high school. So they didn't want to change school districts. So we got an apartment across the street from the high school. And I went to a high school where kids for their 16th birthday would get Mercedes or BMW brand new cars, and I would walk home to an apartment. Um, so my revenge on that was I'll make it myself and I'll prove everyone wrong. That was my primary focus, and I would learn later that that is a very stupid focus. That material things are not what life is about. So I would impress upon him that I would also impress upon him to not stray away from fear, um, to walk through the fire, to walk through the fear. It's how we grow. It's how we learn. It's how we become stronger. There's many times where I look back at the times where maybe I brought some money to my mom and dad so they could pay their mortgage while he was sick, and I wouldn't stay because it was hard for me to be around him, and I was very fearful of what was going to happen. And I relate that. I mean, I we talk to people in our business who are afraid to change jobs or they're fearful of it, and they kind of freeze. Life is not forever. I almost died at noon on a Saturday at 28. Like, holy shit! Like, you you never know when it's going to be time. And so I would let my 20-year-old self know that you need to live now. You need to do what you want. You need to do the things that you want to do. You need to push yourself. You need to never be complacent. You need to continue to raise the bar, whether that's learning and reading new things, or whether it's working out, or experiencing new places and traveling, or sharing your story with other people. That there's someone out there that your story could become their survival guide. I think we've all seen that quote. That is true. And it doesn't mean it has to be a survival guide for somebody who's a motorcycle accident, lost a leg. It could be someone who's at home with an abusive relationship and is fearful to leave that person with their children. It could be many things, but the ultimate bottom line is we have to push ourselves through those fearful situations. We have to push through those things. That's how
Great
we will
advice.
continue to grow as humans.
Yeah, great advice. I love it. And I know that you're going to pass that message along to your kids for sure. Um, anyway, Tom, I will tell you, it is an honor and a privilege to work with you every day. And everybody in the company believes and feels that. You just bring this incredible positive energy, and we appreciate you for it. And we thank you very much for taking the time today on our podcast to share your story that I know is going to impress upon many people and really help them.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the last podcast session we'll have together,
Yeah.
because there's so much more to your
There's so
story.
much more.
We could do 5 podcasts and still not even cover so much that you are all about as a person, and how amazing that is. Your story, what you give back, your why, all of it is just so incredible. And you're one of the blessings I count every morning when I wake up, that I get to be your friend and I get to be in your world. And I just love you dearly, and you know that. And
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back on. We want to hear more of this. I know the audience will want to hear more. So if it's okay with you, we'll invite you back.
you made me cry 3 times.
It's a record. All right.
It
Well,
is.
thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
We appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Thank you for having me. I'd love to be back. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
everyone.
you bet.
Right on. All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Get Real 411 is hosted by Brad Rice and Jamie Kavanaugh, produced by Stuart Jellin, and recorded live from the Amerifund Home Loans studio in Simi Valley, California. You can learn more about the show at getreal411.com and watch full episodes on YouTube. If you're interested in being a guest on Get Real 411, email booking@getreal411.com. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.